got big dreams, I'ma do big things. Yeah, you see me on the big screen looking so clean. I don't move slow, I move fast right past.
Yo, what's going on guys? SamuxPlays here, and I've been having a lot of fun with Season 2, testing out builds and all the new buffs that they dropped for us. Lately, I've been testing out Viessa, however, I did want to kind of move on and start testing out other Descendants. So the next Descendant we're going to test out today is going to be Valby. She did get buffs across the board. She got massive damage buffs, as well as we are going to combine it with a couple of other buffs to give us an insane 100% crit rate. So today, first I'll go over the build, and then we'll look at the gameplay, and of course we'll talk about what got changed, just in case you did not read that 300-page essay that the patch notes were under. So let's go ahead and jump into it. Let me go ahead and switch over. So first, let's talk about the changes. I am going to put them on screen just so y'all can read along, but basically every single one of her abilities got either changed and or buffed. So the first one is going to be water intake. It reads, water intake, the effect has been changed from reducing MP costs while on water to granting MP recovery in and out of combat while on water. So yeah, you're not going to get skill cost reduction anymore. It's just going to give you like recovery now, which is like, you know, it's whatever. But let's go ahead and move on. So we do also have Bubble Bullet, which is going to be continuous damage of small puddle has increased. So again, this is just going to be a damage buff. The same thing applies to Plop Plop. Literally the same buff. Continuous damage of big puddle has been increased. Same thing with cleanup. Continuous damage of waterway has been increased. So she just got damage buffs across the board essentially, as well as the mod that we're going to be using today as Supply Moisture. It also got buffed. They ended up adding a firearm attack increase amount to the mod, which is pretty cool, right? They did also change some of her other Transcendent mods. I did try to play around with them a little bit. However, they just did not appeal to me. I don't think they're that great unless I am just completely missing something, but I did try testing like Hydro Pressure Bomb, which they did reduce the cooldown. However, it still just feels super awkward to use. It is fun to use. It's kind of like the Leap Ajax build where you just build cooldown and you're constantly just flopping all over the place. So it is kind of fun. However, I wouldn't say it's like practical to use, but you could play around with it. I did have a little bit of fun with it earlier today. But now that we're done talking about the buff changes, let's go ahead and discuss the build. Now, if you watched my Viessa video, you're most likely going to notice that not much has changed. Unfortunately, in this game, there is not a lot of variety to play around with. You just have to lock in. If you are going a crit build, you have to build those 4 crit mods. And then generally you throw on the focus on whatever the elements are to give you skill cooldown and that damage buff, right? So we're already locked into 6 mods, as well as MP conversion for the cooldown. Valby kinda needs skill expansion and skill extension. Most spellcasters are gonna opt in to giving them some range on their abilities, if not all. And the extension is just so we can keep the uptime on R3 going. So there's really not too much you could play around with here. The only thing that you could honestly kind of swap out here would be the purple mods for the blue mods, which is going to be these. Dimension Specialist. So if I scroll over this, we are going to be getting more damage from the blue mods. However, you are dropping the skill cooldown. So this is going to come down to preference and what you prefer. If you want to opt in for more damage, you can absolutely just throw in this Dimension Specialist as well as non-attribute Specialist. So if I look here, we're getting 77.2, and then if I go over here, we're getting 81.2, right? You're getting more damage from these blue mods. However, you are sacrificing the 12.2% cooldown that you are getting from the purple mods. So you do get more damage. However, you're going to be losing that cooldown. If you wanted to kind of offset this, if you just happen to find like a cooldown reactor for Valby, you could absolutely take the purple mods off and put in the blue ones. That way you are not sacrificing the cooldown since you are getting it from your reactor. But this is more of like a general use build, as well as if you do slot in a skill cooldown reactor, you are giving up a space if you are trying to get like the perfect min-max reactor, right? So I would just stick with this. The builds honestly have not changed like at all. Like with the old build, you used to slot in like spear and shield for the extra skill power, and then you would throw in like MP collector or something, right? But with this being a crit build, we definitely do want to keep our skill concentration for the skill critical hit damage, because she is going to have a 4x on her skill critical hit damage. So it's going to be pretty massive, right? But anyways, I'm sure you guys have kind of figured it out by now, but basically, let me go ahead and explain how we're going to hit a 100% crit rate. So if I were to throw my abilities down, Supply Moisture is going to be giving us 76% crit with the 4 crit mods on. This is made possible because we are getting a 20% skill critical hit rate increase, and this is also scaling with our other mods, so that it's similar to Viessa's new mod, Absolute Zero, which is giving her that massive amount of crit rate, right? So it's the same thing pretty much. But let's go ahead and talk about the 100% crit rate. So with the blue beetle buff, they added a insane amount of crit rate, so now you can actually cap out at 100% crit rate with Valby if you were holding the blue beetle, because they did buff the blue beetle, right? So if I am holding the blue beetle and I cast my puddle, all of those things are going to work together to give us skill critical hit rate of 100%. This is definitely extremely good since we have such a high critical hit damage multiplier. We are going to be doing a lot of damage. Now keep in mind, you have to be standing in water for this to take effect. So see, when I'm not standing in it, we're just going to have that 15% from just her base, as well as the mods that we have on. You have to cast your abilities and be standing in the water to get that boost, right? So of course the damage is going to vary. However, we're hitting for 291,000 per tick, or we'll say 292 because it's close enough, right? Which honestly isn't that bad. The actual damage numbers are going to change once you fight like different enemies in the dungeons. However, I saw anywhere from like 300k to 400k crits, which is really good. You're basically going to be one-shotting those 400% enemies in the dungeons, except the elites and the guys with like the shields. Everything else will pretty much fall over, so it is going to be a lot of damage. Keep in mind also that you do want to stack your abilities on Valby, so you do want to like throw out your puddle and then, you know, stack your 2 and then stack your 3 with it. That way it's going to be ticking for a lot of damage, as we can see here. Valby can also be really good for dungeons, because if you go ahead and scroll over her cleanup ability, it is also going to grant you 1000 movement speed when you are liquefied. So if I go over here, right, normally our movement speed is going to be 520. If I pop my 3 ability, it is going to give us 1,000, right? Now, keep in mind that this is not going to be as fast as Bunny or the new Viessa. However, it is still viable to use Valby in those dungeons if you are just wanting to mix it up with some variety. Obviously, there is going to be some pros and cons between playing each Descendant. Of course, Bunny is still going to be faster and outperform her. However, with the buffs, I would say that Valby is viable. Which, at the end of the day, you know, if you're play who you like, right? I mean, it's not like you're in a speedrunning contest in a tournament. Valby will end up finishing the dungeon slower. However, I would absolutely still say she's like good in dungeons. Now, one thing to note here is you are only using Blue Beetle as a stat stick, so you're probably not going to be shooting with it. Basically, the goal is you are just going to run over everything in the dungeon, and it is just going to kill everything, right? If you are ever in a position to where you need your gun, or if you are just not killing bosses fast enough, keep in mind that this mod also does boost gun damage. So generally what I will do is I will carry the Blue Beetle to kill all the lower level enemies, And then for the like bosses and or elites that I'm not killing fast enough, I would just swap to Enduring Legacy. Keep in mind, if you were going to main Valby and you wanted to get the absolute most damage possible with whatever setup you're trying to do, you can slot in your preferred weapon. That way you are not dropping skill power when you switch. I ended up not doing that. I pretty much just slotted in the scout rifle so I could get the blue beetle buff while I'm holding it. However, if you wanted to, like in this example, right, if I was swapping to the blue beetle and then for bosses I wanted to swap to my Enduring Legacy gun and then just like, you know, light them up, I could also slot in an Enduring Legacy reactor here, right, on top of this reactor. That way I can freely switch between my blue beetle and my Enduring Legacy without sacrificing that skill power, right? However, that's up to you if you want to actually go that hard and do that. I haven't had any troubles clearing the 400% dungeons or vessel dungeons with Valby, so I'll leave that up to you, though I just wanted to throw that out there, that is an option, right? Now let's go ahead and load this up and see what it looks like in practice. So we'll go ahead and go to, I guess, the Haven, and we'll see how much damage we're doing. Again, the mobs are going to die really quickly, so you'll definitely notice a damage increase from the old Valby after all of the buffs, and especially with the 100% crit rate that we're now getting. So basically you're just gonna pop your 3 and run over the enemies. The good thing about Valby is it ignores unit collision. So if I look behind me and pretty much look at the ticks, we're doing quite a bit of damage. We're getting a couple 350Ks in, 347K, 154, 213. It's not bad damage. As I said, it's not going to be as fast as like Bunny or Viessa, but also keep in mind that that is with just my 3 ability. If you were to take the time to stack up all 3 of your abilities, like if you pressed 1, 2, and 3, you'd be doing a lot more damage, right? So for example, I will hit my 1 here, run over, and everything's dead, right? The cool thing also about Valby is you can, similar to Viessa, you can kind of run backwards and you don't really get penalized like you do on Bunny. So that is kind of an upside. You can kind of like turn around and see what's going on. One thing Valby does struggle with, however, is going to be terrain. So if you are in your 3 and now I have to stop what I am doing to grapple up here, right? You can also like use your 2 ability to get to high places, so you could do something like that, right? But sometimes it can be kind of awkward in certain dungeons because you will be getting stuck while you were in your 3 and you'll have to cancel out of it to kind of like jump over a ledge or something of that nature. But I still think she's like very viable to use in these 400% dungeons, especially if you were just tired of using Bunny and Freyna. She is absolutely viable to be played. Everything's pretty much gonna die as soon as you run over it anyways. So I would say the Valby buffs are pretty good. The only thing that I would kind of recommend, if it were up to me, I would just give her some more movement speed on her Liquify. I would probably up it to like 1100, 1150, maybe even 1200. That way she could keep up with Viessa and Bunny. However, the ignoring unit collision is pretty goated. I don't have to worry about running into stuff, and also I just like Valby, right? So she can be pretty good. But as I said, you guys can go ahead and try it out for yourselves and see if it's something you like. I also did try her in the Vessel dungeon. She does feel pretty good. However, if you are using the Blue Beetle in a Vessel dungeon and you are trying to shoot the shielded enemies, you should probably carry something like Thunder Cage or the Final Masterpiece in your offhand, and or like Voltia or something, right? So you can break the shields, and then immediately after you break the shields, her water tick will kill them, right? So she can be good in Vessel dungeons too. It just kind of depends on your playstyle and preference. But overall, I greatly appreciate the Valby buffs. I think she is one of the coolest characters in the game. Just the fact that she can ignore unit collision alone is a big deal, because I can't tell you how many times I have been tilted when I am on Bunny or somebody else and I just like run into them and I just go from like a full sprint to just immobile and I'm just like, bro. So that is one big upside. For the reactor, you can basically throw on whatever your preference, but if you were trying to like min-max your damage, you would be looking for something like non-attribute and dimension skill boost. Or excuse me, power boost. I ended up just using this one because it rolled a pretty good non-attribute and I couldn't be bothered to farm like the god roll reactor. However, you could also slot in like skill critical hit damage, skill cooldown, kind of like whatever you want. I mean, it's the only thing as the same thing with Viessa, since we are getting 100% crit with this build. You could slot, you don't want to slot in like crit rate, right? Because we're already hitting cap. If you were using it for bossing, obviously you could go for additional scats, like additional attack versus Colossus. It's kind of up to you what you want to rock, but you could definitely go for just if you wanted to like min-max, you could go for like non-attribute dimension. I think would be perfectly fine. I'm just settling for this one though. For the external components, you basically have a choice of if you want to use the Slayer set to give you the extra 26% skill power, which is going to significantly increase your damage. However, I pretty much swap back and forth between using the Slayer and not using it. Usually I'll be using things like this because I prefer survivability, especially when we only have 1 HP mod on. However, if you were trying to min-max your damage, you could definitely go for the Slayer set. It gives you a massive boost to your damage, so it's kind of up to you. There's no like one correct way to do things. If you value the damage more than you do survivability, then go equip the Slayer set. If you value more survivability, then you can look for pieces like this. Another thing you'll note is I also have MP recovery out of combat, which actually helps quite a bit with any spellcaster. It is going to help your mana regen. For the sensor, you also want to have like, ideally you would want like a legendary max MP and then MP recovery in combat. Unfortunately, I don't have a legendary roll here. I just have like a blue one, but I'm just settling with it. But if you were trying to get the god roll, that is what you would be looking for. And for the other two externals, it's kind of just like a flex. I just swap mine out like a lot of the times. You know, if you wanted to do like a double defense, I mean, really like HP is just so good in this game. And unless you're running a shield build, like shield is just bad, right? Which is another reason. It's just like why I don't like the Slayer set, because it's just mostly shield stats. But ideally you're just looking to stack HP, right? So like on this one I have a Slayer set and it's giving me like HP and shield. Granted, the shield's not like that big of a deal, but I'm basically primarily wearing it for the HP, and then I just threw this on, right, just so I can get a little bit of defense. However, it's going to be up to you, but as I said, you just mainly, the main thing to look for here is just MP recovery out of combat and MP recovery in combat with the max MP roll. That's basically what you're looking for. Other than that, guys, that's pretty much it. That is going to be the 100% crit rate Valby build. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did enjoy the video, please consider hitting the sub button. It does help me out a lot in growing my channel, as I am a smaller content creator. Appreciate you guys. I hope you guys have a good one. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments, or as always, if you've come up with a better build, please let me know, because I do love testing builds. I hope y'all have a great one. I'm SamuxPlays. I'll see y'all in Albion. Y'all take care. Peace.